Fourth grade Lackamus authors. Welcome back to Writing Today. So, you know that we've started writing, which means we're in the writing process at the phase of drafting, making that first draft, or what some people call a sloppy copy. So, I want to remind you before we move on, you took the time to make a plan. Remember the day I showed you the different type of plans you could make, and you took a picture of those and attached them to your assignment? You took that time. Remember what I said: plan the work and work the plan. Use this plan to make your next jobs easier for you. So we wrote a hook in the last lesson, and I want to remind your brain that a hook is actually part of your introduction. So let me show you what I mean, because today we're going to focus on the rest of your introduction. Here's a couple examples. You might remember this one from the other day. So remember this introduction? Rustle, 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 snap, crackle, snap. I lifted my head from picking up firewood. My friend Nathan started to talk, but I put my finger to my dry lips. Crackle, snap, rustle. There was that sound again. Something was behind the trees. What could it be? It all began one hot summer day in 2001 when my friend Nathan, who has been my best friend in the whole wide world since I was 5, took me to a small village around Mount Hood for a camping trip. Instead of houses in the village, there were motorhomes. So that's one example, and I'll talk about that example in just a second, but let me give you another example. Maybe this card would be better to cover up the rest. This one's called The Little Reindeer, and we didn't look at this one the other day. It says, one cold winter day, when the sky was as foggy as smoke coming from a chimney, a reindeer appeared from the snow-covered trees. The young reindeer carefully, cautiously, and quietly looked around. He was all alone in an enormous world. In front of the reindeer was a cold river, shimmering like glass in the dim winter's light. The air was so cold. His breath looked like mini, fluffy clouds coming from his mouth. The ground was covered in snow as white as Santa's beard. The trees looked brave, standing in the cold winter air. As the trees towered above the river, it seemed as though they could see their reflections in the glassy river. Hey, do you believe this writing? This writing was written by fourth graders. This is good stuff. So what I want to tell you today is that your introduction has a job. You have got to include in your introduction several things, along with your hook. You need to talk about characters, the setting, remember that's where the story takes place or when the story is taking place, and any background information that your reader needs to know. So to look at this example sitting before you here, you've got a character, that's the reindeer, and you've got the setting, that's a cold river, and the reindeer is clearly outdoors in a forest because there's trees, and the trees are towering above the river. So far that's all we know. Now, in this story, it's highly possible that you don't need a lot of background information. So that's not quite evident. Let's look at the one we looked at today and the other day. In this one, you can clearly see the hook And then remember, the author introduced the characters themselves because this is in first person point of view. I know you've been studying that in reading. We know that because it says I here. So this person is one of the characters, and they tell you about Nathan, who's been their best friend in the whole wide world since they were 5. Now, that's some background information that you might need to know. And then they also included the setting, a small village around Mount Hood for a camping trip. So that author really did a nice job with that. Let me take you all the way back to something else we've looked at, and that was Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. You remember that one? So, you remember the tale of Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Let's take a look at how this author did his intro. His intro is quite simple, and it doesn't include a hook, curiously enough. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. So, what did this author do? Well, if you said they included characters, you were right. You've got mother, father, and Sylvester. If you said that they included some background information, you're right, because it tells us he's collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. That's one of his hobbies. And then also, if you said the setting, that's also true because we know we're in the town of Oatsdale. And you remember the story is going to go all over the town and into the field and meadows looking for Sylvester. So remember the job of your intro. You've got to introduce some things. It's got to include a hook, and it's got to introduce the characters, the setting, and if you need to, any background information. Thanks, leopards. In the next video, we'll write one together.